Hello and welcome to this video. In this video we will see how Linux can save us time and money, and I will also explain what is Linux. I have used Windows for many years. I have used the Mac system for about a year, and now I have used Linux also for several years. And in my assessment, Linux is better than Windows and Mac. This exactly is why I am making this video, so that you also can learn what Linux is and benefit from it. What we will see in this video: we will see how Linux can save us money, how Linux can save us time and energy, what is Linux in case you are new to Linux, what is a Linux distribution, which Linux distro to use in your computer, and then I will also give some ideas on the next steps. Did you know that Linux runs on many devices? Linux is not something new. Linux has been around since the 1990s and is used in many types of devices. For example, home appliances. Maybe the smart home appliance you use, the smart fridge you have at your home, has Linux in it. Servers. The big companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter, and many companies have their software running on Linux based servers. Moreover, supercomputers. These are the world's fastest computers. Many of these world's fastest supercomputers run on Linux. Also, did you know that Android is based on a modified Linux kernel? Yes, the Android developers took the Linux kernel, which is the core part of Linux, modified it and made Android. So now you know that Linux is not something new. It's quite popular inside the computer world. How can Linux save us money? First of all, we can install Linux on as many computers as we want for free. Yes, you do not have to go to a shop, pay money, and get Linux to install in your computer. Now compare this to Windows. Suppose you want to buy Windows, go to Microsoft shop and you see Windows 10 is nearly 10,000 rupees. Windows 10 Professional is nearly 15,000 rupees. So you see, it becomes expensive. On top of Windows, if you want Microsoft Word, Excel or PowerPoint, you have to pay more money for it. Microsoft website shows more than 5,000 rupees per year for the Microsoft Office suite. Linux can save us money on software also. Let's compare Windows and Linux in this case. Microsoft Office, which gives us the Word, PowerPoint, spreadsheet and so on, costs money. Linux has a similar software called LibreOffice, which is free. Microsoft Outlook, which is an email client program, costs money. Linux has an email client called Thunderbird, which is free. If you are a photographer or a graphics designer, you have to buy a software, something like Photoshop, which costs money. Linux has software like GIMP, Inkscape, and so on, which are free. And antivirus. This is an important part. Windows can be affected by many viruses. Because of this, we have to buy antivirus software and of course pay money for it. Linux, on the other hand, is not affected by viruses. I have used Linux for more than 5 years now without any antivirus, and there has been no viruses in Linux. And there are many more free applications in the Linux world. Okay, to be fair, we can use LibreOffice, Thunderbird and GIMP on Windows also. However, they do not come by default in Windows. You have to search and install them. But many Linux operating systems have them pre-installed. Old computers can be too slow on Windows but run fine on Linux. This is a big use case for Linux. Many people have existing computers, and when they upgrade, for example from Windows 7 to 10, the computer becomes too slow. However, if you install Linux on the same old computer, the computer runs faster and becomes usable again. In fact, this is the case for me. I bought a Dell computer in 2011 with Windows 7. When I upgraded it to Windows 10, it became too slow, taking 15-20 minutes just to start up. Then I decided to install Linux. Now the old computer starts up in just few minutes, and I can use it for at least the simple purposes like online learning, browsing the net, and so on. And how can Linux save us energy and time? If you have used Windows, you might have seen the updates. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it fails. When the update fails, we need to figure out what's going on. Another thing I have faced with my Windows computers in the past is crashes. Suddenly, in the middle of work, the computer crashes and it needs to restart. I have lost my work. I have never faced this issue in my Linux computers. Again, a huge energy and time saver. Now, let's get to know what Linux is. Linux is an operating system like Windows and Mac. But Linux is more modular than Windows and Mac. It's like Lego blocks. It has several pieces that we can put together to make the Linux operating system. Let me explain some of the pieces of Linux. At the lowest level of the operating system is the Linux kernel. This takes care of interacting with the memory, the keyboard, the CPU, and so on. So the kernel is for interacting with the hardware. Another component is graphical server, also known as X server. This is responsible for displaying graphics on your monitor. Another piece is the desktop environment. This actually is the user interface. When we work on a Linux computer, what we see and interact with is the desktop environment. There are different types of desktop environments: XFCE, KDE, GNOME, and so on. If you are used to Windows, then XFCE or KDE would be a good choice for you. Then another piece is the applications. The applications include browsers like Firefox or Chrome, or programs like GIMP, Inkscape, and so on. There are some other pieces in the Linux ecosystem: the bootloader, the background services, the init system. I am not showing them here to keep things little bit simple. Since there are different pieces in the Linux ecosystem, people take the different pieces and build what is known as Linux distributions, Linux distros for short. With enough knowledge, you and me also can take the different pieces of Linux and make our own Linux operating system. But we don't have to do it. Many people have done this already for us. For example, there is a Linux distro called Ubuntu, another Fedora, Debian, Manjaro, and many others. We just have to take one of the distros, install in our computers, and start using it. That's it. Some more info on the Linux distros. It's also possible to take a Linux distro and modify it and make another distro. For example, the Debian is one Linux distro, and the company Canonical took it, modified it, and released Ubuntu distro. Similarly, MX Linux is also based on Debian. This means that Ubuntu and MX Linux are similar to each other. Most of the things that work on Ubuntu will work on MX Linux and vice versa. Where can we install a Linux distro? Almost on any computer. If you have a computer at home today, you can install Linux on it and benefit. Which Linux distro is good for a beginner? This is a subjective question. Different people have different opinion. From my experience, I suggest MX Linux or Ubuntu. DistroWatch is a website that lists different Linux distributions and how many are downloaded by users. As you can see, MX Linux, Manjaro, Mint, Ubuntu are in the top 10. Therefore, these are good candidates for us to use in our computers. Now, ideas on next steps. You can run Linux from a USB stick before installing it on a computer. This means that you take a Linux distro, MX Linux or Ubuntu or Mint, and create a USB bootable pen drive or USB stick and try it on your computer just to see how comfortable are you with this Linux distro, and then when you are happy you can install it on your computer. Another idea is installing Linux on a computer along with Windows. This is called dual boot. This is a more common use case, I believe, because you may have a computer with Windows and you are not yet sure whether completely uninstalling Windows and moving to Linux is a good option. So what you can do, keep Windows and install Linux as a dual boot. There are many videos and tutorials on this. I will share some links in the description of this video. So when you have both, you can work on Linux, and suppose you want to do something on Windows, you can use Windows also. So both Windows and Linux can coexist in the same computer. So what is Linux again? Linux is an umbrella term in general. It refers to the whole ecosystem from the kernel to the distros. However, strictly speaking, Linux means the Linux kernel. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please check the links and resources in the description. They will give you more information and help you if you want to try Linux on your computer. I will also provide more videos on this topic in the future. And subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day. Bye bye.